Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, it's not the 1st of October, it is the 2nd of October, and that only means one thing. It is time to recap the orchids that we had in bloom in the past month in September. Now, this video was supposed to be published yesterday. I know, I'm sorry I didn't upload anything, but I woke up with a stiff back. If you didn't know that was a thing, yeah, it can happen. It's not just your neck. And I could barely move yesterday, and sadly today things didn't change much, but I cannot postpone this anymore. So slowly but surely I'm just gonna film some orchids, limit my movements, and just enjoy making videos. Alrighty then, so what you see there, this will not be presented today because it didn't fully open just yet. This is the jungle ice, but she will be for the next video. Because right now, even though she looks really pretty, this is not the full potential. So we're just gonna start with something that is in full bloom. Alrighty, so first off we have the bigibbum hybrid in bloom. Can you believe this? This is a compactum type or variety, and it is indeed a hybrid, but I'm afraid I do not know the whole parentage of this orchid, so let's just say the Dendrobium bigibbum hybrid. If you remember, I purchased this guy earlier this year and I almost massacred him in the sense that I managed to spoil one of the canes. But he bounced back really fast and right now is looking spectacular as a plant. Here you go, down there. We still have to work on size, but that will come with more roots. However, it managed to bloom once again, and that only in a few months after I purchased him. Can you believe it? And look how beautiful he is. The flowers are really tiny and dainty. They have no fragrance, but that's okay because the splashes and the whole contrast, I believe, is just adorable, just gorgeous. I found this orchid in Carrefour here in Europe, and I've also seen it listed in Catasetum 2's eBay page, so I'm guessing this will be a reoccurrence. I'm really hoping it will, just like Dendrobium baryota. So I would suggest that you look out for this orchid in flower shops and garden centers, and of course in Carrefour, because it just seems to me to be so easy growing and so vigorous. And I also have another flower spike here on this tiny little cane. The size has to do with the fact that this orchid didn't have a proper root system. I also kind of massacred it, but he's doing quite nice. And otherwise everything looks very healthy and very vigorous, and particularly the blooms. I don't think I could have asked for better blooms considering. Next up we have an orchid that is currently losing her flowers, but no worries, I filmed her earlier this month. This is the Oncidium Wildcat variety Bobcat. And if you know me, you know that I always suggest that you start off or actually purchase the Wildcats. In my opinion, they're very easy to care for, very rewarding, vigorous and forgiving, so if you're a beginner, I totally recommend this plant. And there are quite a few varieties on the market. The Bobcat is the almost full dark red one. It does still have a little bit of yellow on the margins of the sepals and petals, but those yellow patches can sometimes be so subtle that you absolutely do not see them. What strikes me the most with this orchid is the lip. It has a very velvety dark red lip, which I adore, but sadly no fragrance or nothing notable. Sometimes Oncidiums or these intergeneric hybrids can smell a little bit like plastic or a sweet type of plastic, artificial. It is not my thing and I cannot call them perfumey in any way, so if you buy a Wildcat, don't buy it for the fragrance. There's no such thing. My flowers actually started to open somewhere in August, so I couldn't really film them then because the orchid was not in full bloom. It was in full bloom in September, but by the time September ended, the flowers faded as well. It's okay. It's not a long lasting flower, I would say, but definitely you can get about a month out of a Wildcat Oncidium. Next up we have another, let's say, intergeneric. The old name for this orchid used to be Brassia. Nowadays, I'm not sure how it's called. I'm gonna have to check it out and fill you in on the new name in the description below. So this was a Brassia Mivada, a cross between a Brassia, obviously if you take a look at the spidery and beautiful flowers, and an Adaglosum. Here's where I'm not entirely sure, so maybe the new name will give us some ideas, but yet again another Oncidium type of orchid. This is a super popular orchid in flower shops or garden centers in Europe. You can find a cousin of this orchid, which is the Orange Delight, which has more orange flowers. This one, on the other hand, has pretty yellow flowers. They're not that greeny yellow that I personally don't enjoy. They are a golden yellow indeed, but it's not orange. You cannot say this is orange. However, the flowers are pretty big, and of course they retain the shape of the Brassias, which makes this orchid beautiful, just beautiful in my opinion. Look at the contrast with the actual plant, which is this medium to light green, and then you have the golden yellow flowers. It is one of the best contrasts, here I go inventing words, contrasts of the orchid world. Of course this is personal, but I'm such a sucker for golden yellows because they look so good next to the very green foliage and pseudobulbs. So this is not a fragrant orchid yet again. Being that it is an intergeneric, it might have a little bit of that plasticky or sweet artificial type of scent, but it's not what I would call perfumey. It's nothing that will improve the air in your room, and you can only feel it if you stick your nose into the flower. The attraction of this orchid is, of course, the color, but also the shape of the flowers. And this is just such a nice specimen. Look how big the flowers are. Almost as... Okay, I don't know if you heard that sound. A pigeon tried to land on the ledge of my greenhouse, and the ledge is kind of tiny, it's like this, and the pigeon, I swear, he's so chubby and cute, but he absolutely didn't have any space to land, so he ended up just scratching the window a little bit. And right now he's just hanging around outside. I'm actually gonna go take some seeds or something to give him. Give me a moment. And of course, by the time I got back, he was gone, but I saw where he went. One of our neighbors actually grows pigeons. He has an aviary, and whenever I go on that street, I see them or I hear them. They're beautiful. They have feathers on their little legs, and they're all chubby and nice. Well, they're not chubby. They're just well fed. They just look so pretty. But yeah, this guy, I don't think he was hungry. I think he was just curious about my greenhouse. Alrighty, so Brassia Mivada, pretty easy to care for orchid and pretty similar to the Wildcats. Not as easygoing, but definitely not a finicky orchid either. And to wrap up the intergenerics, this is the Oncidopsis Bartley Schwarz. It is the normal variety, and I have a really beautiful display this year from this guy. Because he bloomed somewhere in the summer, the color is not so intense. Although on camera it does seem that way, in reality the color is really dark, not intense, and I do have quite a lot of tessellation, as you can see. I find this very similar to the Nelly Eiler in this regard. However, care-wise, nothing close. Don't worry. This is yet again a very easy to care for hybrid. Very popular here in Europe at least, but I think in other territories as well. Unlike the other two, this guy is actually fragrant. It's not a very powerful fragrance, but I do really enjoy it. It has the smell of candy, a bit artificial but pleasant nonetheless, at least to my nose. It is not powerful, so it cannot fill up a room, but the good thing is it will not give you headaches either. Alrighty, next up we had quite the premiere. This is the Sailaja New Cetana, which I had for a few years and I was really looking forward to the bloom. It bloomed. We made a care video. I'll link it down below, and believe it or not, this is the second flower. Each flower is not long lasting, I have to say, about a week, maybe a little more than a week, but very soon after another flower is produced. Now this is the sheath I was talking to you about, which comes off when it dries, and next to the bud there is another, let's call it a capsule, which will start to swell when this orchid is done, or actually when this flower is done, and from inside another bud and yet another capsule will arise and will be formed, and in the end you can end up with a pretty long flower spike, and each bloom will open sequentially and last for quite a lot of time as the orchid matures. It is still not mature, the pseudobulb. The flowers are absolutely gorgeous. There is no fragrance, sadly, but just look at this. I find it such a beautiful flower with such great colors, and I dare say this second flower is just a little bit prettier than the first one. I don't know, maybe I'm just being overly personal here, but I do really like this orchid. Totally recommend it. It's not a fussy grower. It can handle low temperatures, it can handle high temperatures. It just likes a lot of water. Alrighty, next up an orchid that I purchased by mistake. This is the Gastro Kylus Publicus. You'll have the name spelled in the description below. Now this came with a little bud that opened, and there you go. This is the little flower. It's really hard to show because the flower spike is so tiny, and the flower herself is really tiny, and I appear to have some damage on this petal. But the other petals look okay, and there you go. That's the tiny flower. This is a miniature orchid. As I was saying, I purchased it by mistake. It wasn't a planned purchase, so I don't really know what to say about this orchid. I just got it. It's a little dehydrated. She's just growing some roots, but I need to do something with this one. I need to maintain the top a little bit more damp than this. But there we go. I read up on this orchid. It's supposed to be fragrant, but mine is not. I did not feel anything, but just look at this orchid. surely it doesn't look all that great. And I have to do quite a lot of research on this one, so I cannot really say much. But there you go, that's the little flower. It's a miniature orchid, and if you want to learn more about it, if you're intrigued about the flower, I'll add a link down below to the Orchid Species website so you can at least learn more about the species. Another orchid we had in bloom the past month that sadly doesn't have a flower anymore is the BC Saint Andre. This is a cross between a Brassivola and a Cattleya, the Dowiana, but sadly the flowers really don't last long, maybe 2 weeks, tops 3 weeks. The flower though is beautiful. It is the biggest orchid flower in my entire collection. When it first opens, it has a really nice purple lip, but as it ages, the color just goes away and the end result is a pretty, let's say, rustic flower. Many of you said it has an antique feel to it, and I have to agree. The smell of the flower is fantastic at night, just like a Brassivola. She smells only during the nighttime, and it has a very, very similar fragrance to the Brassivola. I'm suspecting less similar to the Dowiana. It is one of my absolute favorite orchids, and this is the second bloom it produces this year. It grows incredibly fast, and in 1 year it can mature multiple pseudobulbs, and with a bit of care they can potentially all bloom. I had one pseudobulb after the other bloom at a difference of about 2 or 3 months, so that's pretty great. But it did so in the summertime. This orchid really enjoys warmth and sunshine, so I would say it will not bloom in winter time, but in the summer, absolutely delightful. Next up, the Phalaenopsis species, which I've already filmed in a previous video when I talked about these girls, but we need to mention them again. First of all, the Phalaenopsis Karen Annie, which is a primary hybrid, and one of its parents is the violacea. It's a beautiful, yet again, sequential blooming Phalaenopsis orchid that only blooms in summertime here in a climate which has a major difference between summer and winter. And the flowers are really, really cute. They have a subtle fragrance, fruity fragrance, nothing like the violacea, sadly. And they most definitely do not fill up a room with fragrance, but if you go close enough, you can absolutely feel a little bit of a scent, and it's a really enjoyable scent, really fresh. But the fragrance is not the main attraction of this orchid. The flower spikes full of flowers and the flowers' colors are what I think the main attraction. Next up, another hybrid. This is the Phalaenopsis Sheen Fly Eagle, which yet again is losing her flowers, but I've already filmed her. This is a hybrid of the Phalaenopsis tetraspis 1, which can always bloom different, and the pattern can always be different from flower to flower. And as you can see, mine decided to bloom with 2 different flowers. That's always so eye-catching, and I really, really like it. However, it is not the only attraction of this orchid. Can you believe it? It also has a magnificent fragrance, in my opinion. The tetraspis 1 doesn't have such a beautiful fragrance, I have to say. This smells sweet, fruity as well, a bit like mango, which I guess comes from the tetraspis, but her other parent gives her a really nice, sweet, warm fragrance to her. I just absolutely love it. I was not expecting it. Obviously, I purchased it for the flowers, but there we go. It also has a beautiful fragrance. And the last Phalaenopsis species that we have in bloom is the Ballina. This is a pretty old orchid in my collection, and many of you already know it. Can we just take a moment to appreciate that the new leaves look great? They don't have the spotting anymore. And I know I mentioned this a million times, I think, but I always have new viewers and they always ask me what's with the spotting. So I feel the need to explain. The spotting comes from spider mites. They transmit a virus called orchid fleck virus. Not all orchids are affected or display symptoms. It's not a nasty virus. From what I researched, an orchid can definitely fight it off, eliminate it from its system if properly cared for. And I do have another orchid totally cleaned from this virus, and the second orchid that managed to survive is the Ballina, and as you can see, looking prettier than ever. Now, unlike the other two, this is a proper species. It is a particular variety. This is the Ponkan variety. It is one of the best smelling Phalaenopsis species there is. As you can see, colors are amazing. The fragrance is quite strong, just like the Fly Eagle. And it's just one of those iconic orchids that many orchid collectors have in their collection. So that's about it for today. As always, you will have all of these orchids names written down below in the description so you can copy paste them. And don't forget to leave me a comment down below telling me which one was your favorite, practically voting for one of these orchids. Only one, not multiple ones. And at the end of the year, we're gonna make a sort of competition. Well, bottom line, I just want to know which is your favorite orchid out of my collection, the ones that bloomed, let's say in 1 year. At the end, we will declare a winner. And yeah, I'm really curious to see which one you like the best. So alrighty guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. I have to say, I cannot wait to sit down. But before that, you know the drill. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps out my channel. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down because that helps my channel a lot as well. Subscribe for regular orchid and plants videos, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye! By the way, you know how I tell you it's always a fantastic idea to know a little bit about other things that maybe not interest you as much? Because you never know when you're gonna have to use that knowledge. For example, story time. I had this friend a few years ago. She was a TV presenter. She is a beautiful woman and managed to get a part in a foreign movie. Well, foreign for us. So she goes in this country to film a movie and she starts posting pictures of whatever she was doing there. And by the way, this happened about 2 years ago. And in one of the pictures, she is drinking out of a Nepenthes pitcher. Now, if you don't know the Nepenthes, it is a carnivorous plant. You might have seen it already on my channel, if not, for sure on Brad's channel. And in the description, she was saying something like drinking the morning dew, the health, the brain, blah, blah, I don't know. She was saying something really romantic of the sorts. And of course, when I saw the picture, cringed like nothing before. Because if you don't know much about Nepenthes, or actually carnivorous plants, well, they do what their name suggests they do. They hunt and they eat prey. And that prey can be insects, or even toads, or frogs, or even small birds, depending how big the pitcher is. Pretty much you will eat whatever fits in the pitcher because that's the trap. Now, what do you suppose is in the pitcher? Do you think it's pure water, morning dew, rainwater? No. No. The pitcher is basically an open stomach. So inside you'll have digestive enzymes and stuff, and corrosive stuff and acids and things of the sorts. And what she was drinking out of was not a fresh pitcher, the unopened pitcher. No, it was an older pitcher with the lid quite open. And I don't even want to think what was in that pitcher. Of course, maybe not something big, but maybe a few tiny flies there were. So I instantly cringed and I was thinking, should I give her a message or something? But then what would I say? Hey, we didn't talk in the longest time. By the way, you just drank digestive fluid. Don't do it again. You know, it felt a little weird, so I didn't say anything. And she didn't post any other picture with her drinking out of Nepenthes pitchers. But note to self, always good to know that there is such a plant that feeds on small animals. And it looks like that. And when you know that, probably you'll think twice before drinking from that pitcher. Now, I don't know who told her it's okay to drink from the pitcher. Maybe it's okay, I don't know. But you know, the thought of it, no, just no. Don't drink out of open Nepenthes pitchers. It's the plant's stomach, really. Just don't do it. So anyway, always good to know a little bit from every field, even if you're not interested in it.